Hi there, I'm Richard Pegler, publisher of the Movers and Storer magazine and the organiser of the Movers Storer show. I'd like to welcome you to the first of our this year's one-on-one conversations, and we're delighted to kick the year off with a revisit and a further discussion with our good friends at Get a Mover, who we've been working with over the last 12, 18 months, and have lots of exciting plans ahead of us. So I'd like to introduce you to David, and if I can ask David just to give a brief introduction of himself and the business, and maybe a little bit about how he came to be working with Get a Mover, and what things outside of the industry, are often misunderstood about lead generation. So David, if you were happy to do that intro, then over to you.
Yeah, thanks very much for having us back on. It's obviously great to catch up again. Yeah, maybe to tell those who don't know, my name's David. I'm head of marketplace at Get a Mover, and I've been here for just under 6 years now. Before that, I spent close to 15 years in tech. So that started out in legal tech before moving into B2B e-commerce, and now, of course, with the online marketplace at Get a Mover. Everything we're doing is focused on removal and storage companies. And the key difference for us is we're focused on lead quality and making sure that those connections are turned into real jobs and not just inquiries. Personally, I've always been quite drawn towards marketplaces because I think they work so well, right? They create value on both sides. So in this case, for the consumer, for the moving company, and also it's a bit more pragmatic. That's also something that's especially true of Get a Mover. It's not growth at all costs, but it's very much test, prove it works, and then scale. That approach has always suited my way of doing things quite well. So that's something I was really drawn to. In terms of the final question you ask, what is something maybe people outside the industry often misunderstand about lead generation? I would say typically there's an assumption that more leads automatically means more business. In reality, most movers don't really have a volume problem, but maybe more on a quality and contactability problem. So ultimately, if you can't reach the consumer, or they're not that serious, then the lead doesn't really exist in that case, as far as you're concerned, because you want it to move into a job and a completed job at that matter.
I think to that point, I think that the point of volume, it is the misrepresentation, isn't it? Is that it's that kind of pilot high kind of philosophy, which actually, as you say, people want the quality leads, and not everybody's geared up for huge volumes. So I do think it's one of those misnomers that when you talk to anybody about across other sectors as well, when I talk to people, you mentioned lead generation. There's this, that's the fear. So it's good to hear that that's something you guys are addressing. So yes, I mean, if we touch a little bit on the kind of the landscape, the removal and kind of storage landscape at the moment. Obviously, clearly, there's significant influences from outside the immediate sectors, all the kind of geopolitical thing, which is very topical at the moment and very relevant. But we've seen the industry change and evolve a lot over the last 5 years. It'd be really good to get your perspective from your business angle of how you've seen those changes, and in that process of change, what kind of pressures do you find that your customers are coming under, whether that be a pricing, a competition, a staffing, a little bit of insight as to that experience, so how you've seen that change?
Yeah, there's a good question. There's plenty of outside pressures at the moment, of course. Uh, it's also important for us to understand that from our perspective, we are fundamentally a technology company. So we do see and we recognize from our perspective, it's become a lot more competitive. It's become a lot more digital. Typically, consumers are expecting quicker responses, clearer prices, the smooth experience, and if they don't get that, they simply move on. So we're not here to, let's say, be the expert for what really is happening in the ins and outs of the moving companies, because they know that better than us, but we can speak from that technology perspective. Yeah, what is clear, of course, is costs are under pressure across the board. So it's not a strange thing to say that companies just have to be much more deliberate where they spend, how they operate. Exactly as you mentioned, Richard, there's plenty of world events ongoing or that have been going on in recent years that are leading to inflation. And higher costs at the forecourt in particular are very much felt, especially if that's going to affect your margin levels. And beyond that, there's the element which is there every year, which is really well known, of course, to moving companies, the seasonality. So when demand dips, the cost of acquiring that work becomes much more visible. That's where the lead quality really starts to matter, because all of a sudden wasted spend is felt much more in those periods.
And do you see that seasonality? Do you see a consistent pattern across Europe, or do you find region by region it's different? I know the UK is very much kind of that spring autumn kind of peaks, which tend to fit around. We're moving towards Easter now, which tends to historically tie around Easter holidays, and then that kind of late summer, early autumn period. Or is that true across Europe, or do you find that it's different in each region?
Yeah, maybe for the context first. So we obviously operate in 19 different countries. Primarily that's within the European countries, the likes of France, Germany, UK, Switzerland. Typically what we see is that it follows a similar trend. There is some nuance in that in countries maybe further afield, like Australia, New Zealand, but it is more or less the same sorts of trends that we're seeing as the UK.
Right. And you touched a little bit earlier on about, leads and some of the historical perception of lead generation, that volume. So how has lead sourcing evolved, from a removal companies kind of change their approach and their requirements? What are they demanding more of, or what are their expectations, what they're looking for? And how are you seeing that, and how are Getamura responding to support that kind of journey?
Yeah, first and foremost, companies are looking for more and more qualified leads, right? It's how it's been checked in terms of a lead also determines whether it's actually worth their time. So I think typically what you see now is there's less tolerance for maybe a vague or incomplete information that's coming across. And at the same time, anything that inflates volume without improving contactability, it just doesn't hold up anymore. So businesses are much quicker to spot when something looks good on paper but doesn't turn into real conversations. And maybe even within that, how exactly you determine a lead as verified is also important. So it's not only necessarily a background check that this person has an email or a phone number, but also doing a live in-person check tells us something about that consumer's intent as well. So again, not only about the quality, but even within what you perceive as quality, how exactly you determine that quality is really important.
Yeah, and I guess as you said earlier on, that's one of the big drivers where there was in the early days it was about a volume kind of thing, and now it's about a quality, and it's about a refined quality as well. It's about that detail. I guess that leads nicely into kind of getting us you to talk a little bit about how Getamura has differentiated themselves from other businesses in this sector, and how does that fit with the evolving landscape we're seeing across the industry, and typically what kind of challenges your clients are coming up against that you're striving in partnership with them to kind of evolve. So could you share a little bit of that insight with us?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's no surprise that we sit quite firmly on the side of quality in the market. Like we mentioned, a lot of the industry has maybe historically leaned towards volume, generate as many queries as possible, let the mover figure it out. We've always taken a different view than that. If you can't speak to the customer, the lead has no value. So the problems we're typically seeing are mainly around inconsistency. So either there's just not enough leads because yes, with quality, you don't want to focus on volume, but you still need to make sure there's a reasonable amount, or that there's too many who don't go anywhere. And a lot of that comes down to not being able to get hold of the right person. So for us, success is really simple. Are our moving companies winning work and seeing a return? And if that's not happening, then the volume doesn't really matter. Within that, the predictability is also a big part of it. So how we think about our product is important, because we're constantly trying to make incremental improvements and measuring if that makes a difference. So we're looking at metrics, whether that's customer satisfaction, whether that's the retention or the churn, and also most importantly, the direct feedback we're getting. And that's also where verified leads only was driven from us. So what that means is we're taking the direct feedback that too much time is being wasted on incorrect numbers, unreachable numbers. And what we do is, instead of just checking that phone number exists in the background, we actually verify it in real time. So as a consumer is filling in the form, they are also prompted basically to enter a 4-digit code that they receive to the phone number that they input. And that is a confirmation of not only this number is verified, but it's also verified by that user in that moment. And it might seem like a small step, but it removes a lot of noise. And more importantly, it makes the outcomes much more predictable for the mover, because they know if they call, they're getting that person who has verified that number. And we, of course, work with best-in-class partners to be able to make sure we do that in a way that is safe and secure. But we do this for over 500,000 consumer requests every year across all the countries we work in. And we also allow them to, for example, update the number if they put the wrong one in, whether it's through resend options. So what started as essentially quite a simple option also takes a lot to discover how to make sure we give the consumer options to really verify themselves and the number, so the moving company can get in contact with them, because we also know the moving company's preference is to get on the phone and speak to that person and understand a bit more about the move, or get access to the property and judge a bit for themselves what the situation is and what they need to do in terms of the people and the equipment to bring on site.
So you're verified lead only. That's a real big kind of step forward, because I guess in the simplest terms, you're giving both customers, whether it be the mover or the removal business, exactly what they want, which is quality, linked, relevant, and appropriate, and actually matching best in practice together. So I guess that's a real, and obviously from what you were saying there, you obviously liaise and have lots of feedback from the removal business you're working with, and I guess that's a constant dialogue and a constant process which feeds into your development and strategy plans.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fundamental to the strategy we take. I've mentioned it before, and it's true now. We're here for the moving companies and not the shareholders. So that's always the approach we take, even as we were testing this approach of how exactly to basically provide a verified telephone number. Again, there's lots of ways of doing it. We did it in this user-focused way, so it's done in real time, to also make sure that not only is the reachability improved, but there's the intent of the person filling in the form behind it. As we were even running the experiment, we were also running checks based on those who did not do this. So those before we had the verified leads only, and what we saw in all the markets we did it, reachability was up, and the completeness of information was up. So even though we talk about verifying the telephone number, it also gives, again, some level of intent, and that's also some seriousness if you put in your personal data in, like your telephone number.
Yeah. And kind of what leads on from there is, I guess, is probably one of the obvious questions, is about AI and the role of AI. It's everywhere. It's in everything we kind of do now, and it's got lots of touch points, and it's big talking point across the removal and storage sector, the role it's playing and the role it's going to play. Have you seen the advent of AI impacting on the lead generation in this sector? And are there areas where you're already using it, or as part of the automation, or as part of the solution, or as part of that verification process? And I guess the question that also people want to hear is, are there areas which are still going to need that human touch? Are there still elements that you think actually AI is great, but the human involvement is critical at that stage?
Yeah, absolutely. What we know about AI is, for sure, it's having an impact. There's companies in the world who are using it to amazing standards. But I think if you're focusing on how we're using it and how we are identifying its use, we can see mainly is helping to improve efficiency, but it's not necessarily changing the fundamentals. So the basics still matter. Is the customer real? Can you contact them? Are they actually moving? AI doesn't replace that. One interesting thing that we've even seen as we've gone through experiments is consumers themselves aren't confident in maybe what information they even need to put when they're filling in the form. So, for example, in an experiment we ran with over 10,000 consumer requests, only 67% said they felt confident about everything that they listed, what they were actually moving. So in that relation, there's still a gap in terms of the input quality, and the technology is only as good as the input. So we have to make sure that AI is not just put on top for the sake of it, but that it's based on a good starting point. That being said, we're also practical, right? So where AI is useful for us today is, as I said, making the processes faster and more scalable. So one of the things that we are doing at the moment is for new moving companies who are joining our platform, we want to keep those standards high, but it's also very difficult with a human touch point to check everything about these new moving companies. But for us, keeping the standard high is a non-negotiable. So what we do within that, we have ID checks, and that's not through AI, but that's through a tool which allows them to upload the ID and do an automatic check. Then we also use lookups on the company information, but we actually use AI to check documents like transportation or insurance. So that's obviously, as you can imagine, very unique to each country. And even in the UK, there's a lot of different types of insurance and companies that can come from. And what we've done is created a lot of different prompts to recognize, does this have the right validity? Is this the right title? Is this the right company name? And multiple other factors. And if we see that everything's identified, we confirm that along with the other checks we do as then a legitimate moving company. So what this does is it means that as we're able to scale, we're able to keep the bar high and let moving companies sign up, for example, on a Saturday night and experience a free trial straight away, rather than having to wait 2 days, 3 days while we do manual checks. And we did that in a very simple way, right? So we first and foremost did it with a human touch point throughout to make sure it works as it should. And then when we saw it was doing, we then allowed the AI, the automation to take over. But that being said, we also use it internally as well. So whether that's doing checks on our code, but maybe even more obvious in translations. We operate, as I said, across these 19 different countries. That used to slow us down quite a bit to get all the different language requirements. But now what we do is, based on the previous learnings of how we talk and how we translate, we put in place a first version, and then that is sense checked by our local language speakers. So in terms of efficiency, that's a huge gain for us, because if somebody's on holiday for 2 or 3 days, we can also maybe go to another language speaking expert who doesn't have so much time and ask them to sense check, is this logical? So for us, it's quite simple. It needs to be used where it genuinely adds value or saves time. Otherwise, it becomes noise.
So, David, it's clear that you guys have spent a lot of time looking at AI and looking at how you integrate it and how far you integrate it. And I think you're absolutely right. That's one of the big challenges is some people think it's the solution to everything, and actually it's not. It's that blend, and it's clear that you guys have got a good handle on that. When we talk about kind of lead generation, how do you see that kind of the future of that? And and again, I guess AI touches on that, but how do you see companies changing the way they buy leads or how customers choose their mover? Do you see AI having a role in that? And I guess probably what lots of people would like to know is, from your experience, what should a removal company or storage business be doing now to prepare for the kind of future kind of developments? A very open-ended question, but it'd be
Yeah.
great to get your guys' kind of approach on this.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, at the end of the day, you need the good input, right? So our consumers looking to intentionally use moving companies, that won't change. So we can continue to improve the efficiency, but fundamentally, it's not something that's going to change what matters in that perspective. So for me, that's quite a simple answer in regards to how the AI will change in terms of how companies buy leads. That may change in the future, but at this moment in time, that's pretty much the approach, and the fundamentals will still remain the same. Yeah, what maybe companies should be doing in terms of preparing for what's coming, and maybe in terms of the businesses they should be looking at. I would say the moving companies should be looking at businesses that apply AI in a practical way. So not losing sight of what actually matters, but the AI is added in a logical way that's going to improve quality of the leads. So more focus on being selective maybe with the businesses that they're working with, and making sure that something is done in a tangible way with clear features, and not something that's going to provide gimmicks which might look good but won't add anything to the leads that they're receiving.
So yeah, and do you see, AI and the way people often talk about, the impact of AI from a consumer perspective versus the use of Google and sourcing information that way. Do you think there's much that's going to have much of an impact going forward? Where consumers look for information?
So consumers will still be able to find information by, of course, searching for it. Maybe that's a bit easier coming to the surface in terms of looking for prices. But ultimately, if they want to compare the costs and they want to compare the prices and they want that done in a clear and effective way, or the services, the reality is that's only going to come with speaking to moving companies directly. So yes, in terms of estimations, that's perhaps coming easier. And maybe with that, consumers also expect it to come quicker. But for the really specific costs and understandings, that still sits in this case for the moving companies with them to be able to give a detailed, accurate cost or service specific number or need.
So, looking at your perspective, looking at removal companies, what's the kind of what's one mistake you kind of see removal companies making when it comes to leads, and what would you advise a business owner or a removal company who feels they're spending money but not seeing the results? What advice would you be giving them, and how would you give one piece of advice for companies reviewing their lead strategy for the year?
So with regards to mistakes, it's not really about mistakes, but maybe it's about understanding the type of lead. So typically a consumer, as I mentioned, using a platform like ours is looking to compare. And as we've mentioned, they have intent. They have intent already, but they're looking for the best service, the best price, or whatever other factor they see as most important and that's most suitable for them. A local mover can also be another element for to give you an example. So it's not about making mistakes, but really that type of lead and who you're talking to and what they are looking for. If I was to be advising a business spending money but not seeing the results, then the first thing I'd say is look at the contactability. How many of those leads can you speak to? If that number's low, highly likely that's the core issue, because that's the first thing you expect, of course, to be able to contact and get hold of those leads. And more broadly, I'd encourage companies to back platforms that are genuinely verifying the leads in a way that is clear and understandable, and also that includes the consumer. So not just background checks. If you generally look for platforms who are working for moving companies rather than shareholders, that also makes sure that you're going in the right direction. And as I've also mentioned, the way we are approaching that is that, for example, when we start to develop something, we start with the feedback from the moving companies. What problems are they trying to solve, and build solutions on top of that, and try to create some sort of value there before scaling it. So only once we see that there's good value do we then start to roll it out. And the goal is, in the end, it's a win-win-win. So companies get good value. For us as a marketplace, we're able to help the consumer and the moving company. And if you stick to that, naturally you end up with better outcomes, even if it's with fewer leads overall.
But yeah, I guess the key message I kind of take from that, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you know, it's that verified element. It's that's the new kind of the new standard within the sector that people should be striving for, expecting, or asking for, because as you say, the ability is there to do that. So to take a lead from just a name or a partial number to something that's been verified, that's now where everybody should be sitting saying, actually, that should become the given almost, and then it's how you move on from there. So I guess that's the bit I take away. If I was wearing an operator's hat right now, that's the key element.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we see as our minimum baseline, but we also see it as what we believe should be the minimum baseline that the moving companies also would expect. So of course we want to improve from there, but that's at least the minimum standard we want to set ourselves. And as I mentioned, it's because it's not only about the real-time verification of your number, but also the level of intent that is brought with that as well.
Yeah, perfect. To kind of sum things up, and bring this kind of conversation to a close. First, as I said right at the start, we're hugely excited about the relationship we've been building with you guys, and what you guys are doing in the market, how you're taking lead generation on to the next level, and we're really keen to play our part in supporting that and helping share that across our audience. And I think lots of people will be excited when they get a chance to listen to this conversation and see that. That's what excites us. So I guess one of the questions is, what excites you most about the kind of the future of the removal and storage sector? And then obviously at the end of that year, where can people find out a little bit more about working with you guys, and any further thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, thank you for having us on today. We always like to, of course, make sure we're really getting involved with yourselves, but also anyone who is working in the sector, because the reality is the closer we get, the more we can understand it. So that's something for us which is quite key. Yeah, in terms of what excites me most personally, I'm quite outcome focused, and I believe that this industry, but also the way we operate as a company, should also be the same. That we're really looking at what is the outcome, because again, less focus on more volume, but more focus on what actually converts into real work, and what's working for the moving company will be the same as what's working for us as a marketplace, and also at the consumer, of course. We see basically that the tools are improving, so both on the consumer and the moving company side, and we're slowly making the whole process more efficient and more predictable within that. If people want to, of course, know more about us, they can go to getamover.co.uk/companies. I believe that gives a good overview of what we do. And my final thought, I would say, is don't overcomplicate things. More often than not, the simplest approach is the most effective. So let's not get caught up too much in the buzz that comes with AI, and make sure we stay focused on the outcome and where it can be used practically, logically. Of course, we make use of it, but most importantly, for the right outcome.
Absolutely. Well, we'll make sure that at the end of this, there'll be a link to yourself and to the site, so that it's dead easy for people to click from that. But as I say, really great to get some time with you today. As I say, always excited, always feel energized after these kind of conversations. And it's great to see that further development of verified leads, and how that's driving quality from both a consumer and an operator's perspective. So hats off to you guys, and looking forward to continuing to work closely with you. Thank you for your time as well.
Yeah, thank you very much, Richard. Appreciate it.
Cheers, David.